What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Here we are with another reaction video. In this one we have Gravity, an untold discovery of ancient India. Really? Laws of motion from Vasishika. I hope I said that right. Project Shivoham. Before we dive in, if you guys happen to enjoy it, please don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. And if you would like to support the channel by becoming a member, there's a link in the description section. You can sign up with that and receive exclusive benefits.
Christopher Columbus discovered America. Well, this is what we learn at school. But is it really the fact? It is a fact, but it is a subjective fact. What it means is, from a medieval European standpoint, it is a fact that he discovered a sea route to America. But even before he stepped into America, there were people living over there. So technically he did not discover America. He probably discovered a sea route to America. Or may not that either, because Leif Erikson, a Norse explorer from Iceland, apparently was the first European to set foot on the North American continent. So Columbus discovering America is a very subjective fact, which is right from a medieval European standpoint. Here is another example. Vasco da Gama discovered sea route to India. History says that he is the one who discovered sea route from Europe to India. Well, it's not completely true, and here is why it is so. Back in the 12th century, there was immense competition amongst the European kingdoms to trade with the Far East countries like India and China. So explorers like Vasco da Gama and Christopher Columbus, they set out on expeditions back then to find out a sea route to the Far Eastern countries, which are India and China. Vasco da Gama, in his first voyage to India, he documented it in a journal, and here is what he wrote about it. This is the map from Vasco da Gama's own journal, The First Voyage to India. And this is how he traveled all the way from Lisbon, over Africa, from Malindi, eventually to Calicut in India. Those were the days when sea route is already established between Africa and India, and there was a lot of trade going on between these two continents. In his journal, Vasco da Gama clearly writes that with the help of a pilot given by an African king, they were able to reach to India. Well, that's a hard fact. So technically,
how you discover the sea route if there was already a trade route in place? You couldn't have discovered.
Vasco da Gama did not discover sea route to India on his own, but from a medieval European standpoint, yes, he's the one who has actually came from Europe to India by sea. So again, it is a subjective fact that Vasco da Gama discovered sea route to India. Well, why I'm saying all this is, Newton discovering gravity is also a very subjective fact. And in this video, we'll explain you why is it so. Well, there are many people who discovered gravity and worked on it much before Newton. And here is our record about it. Maharishi Kanada, an ancient Indian physicist and philosopher who is conservatively placed at around 600 BC, but he could possibly be much older than that. Maharishi Kanada has written a treatise on different elements about the nature and the cosmos and the forces present in it. The name of the book is Vaisheshika Darshanam. In this book, he explained about different elements of nature, the forces present in it, how they react to different circumstances, how do the 5 elements of nature behave in different situations, and a lot more. This book is the prime source for our topic today, which is gravity. In this treatise of Vaisheshika Darshanam, he gave a lot of principles about the fundamentals of the nature. And here is one such. Prudhivyapas tejo vayurakasam kalo digatma manaiti dravyani. Here is what it means. Prudhvi, earth; apas, water; tejas, fire; vayu, air; kala, time; dik, space; atma, self; manas, mind. What Maharishi Kanada says is, this entire nature is made up of these 8 elements. The first 6 are pretty easy to understand: earth, water, fire, air, time, and space. Self and mind are not just limited to only human beings, but here the fact is, every living thing has a sense of self and also a sense of cognition as well. So that's what he means. Explaining about how objects move in this nature made up of these 8 elements. Further down, he gives another principle which reads as follows: Uchchepanam, Avakshepanam, Akunchanam, Prasaranam, Gamanam, Iti Karmani, which means upward movement, downward movement, contraction, expansion, and horizontal movement. These are the 5 possible karmani. Karmani here has a very contextual meaning. He classifies different motions into these 5 categories. And he explains each of these motions in detail as well. For now, let's pick up the first one, Utchepanam, the upward movement. Remember the word Utchepanam. Maharishi Kanada writes as follows: Gurutva Prayatna Samyoganam Utchepanam. Let's break it down. Gurutva, gravitational force. Prayatna, external upward force. Samyoganam, confluence. Utchepanam, upward movement. This is the word.
So basically what we're gathering from this video is Sir Isaac Newton might have said he discovered gravity, but he really didn't discover gravity or the laws of gravity. They were really already founded by Vasco. So, I don't know. We giving Newton all the credit though, ain't we?
Word to word translation of the above phrase. Let us see in detail what exactly this means. Imagine that you're standing and throwing a football straight up into the air. Now there are three forces that acts on this ball. The first one is the force with which you throw the ball upwards, the external force coming in from you, creating a thrust into the ball. So that's the upward force. Second one is the downward force, which is the gravitational force of the earth. And there is a third one as well, which is the air resistance. So these three are the forces that act on this football. This is simple physics and we know that. Now let's see what Maharishi Kanada says. The first one is Prayatna, the external upward force with which I throw the ball straight up into the air. And the second one is Gurutva, which is the downward pull of the earth, which is the gravitational force. I'll explain in a short while how Gurutva means gravitational force. But here if you see, what he says is the upward movement of any body, which is Utchepanam, is a resultant of these two opposing forces, Prayatna and Gurutva. So that's what it means. Gurutva Prayatna Samyoganam Utchepanam. If we translate this into a bit of technical terms, the upward movement of any object that is thrown straight up into the air is directly proportional to the resultant of the upward external thrust and the downward gravitational pull. Now this is one of the oldest written records about gravitational force as per ancient Indian records. I'm not generalizing that this is the oldest one in the world, but definitely this is much older than the discovery of Newton. For your reference, Vaisheshika Sutras, first chapter, first Ankam, 23rd Sutra, oldest written record about gravitational force. Not just about gravitational force, but Maharishi Kanada also explained about the physics involved in the laws of motion as well. Now let us see that as well. One of the sutras says that Samyoga Vibhaga Yoga Nam Karma Samanam. And another one says that Nadravyanam Karma. So the translation is, if two bodies have to collide or move away, the cause is common, which is karma, the force. And in the next line he says, the karma or the force cannot come from the bodies. It has to be external. Could sound a bit confusing, but it is not. Let me explain. What Maharishi Kanada says is, if two bodies have to collide by coming together or move away from each other, the cause is common, which is a karma. Karma here is a force or an action, and the karma or the force or the action cannot come from the bodies within. It has to be an external one, an external intervention between these two bodies. That's what he says. That's nothing but the first law of motion defined by Newton. An object at rest will stay at rest, and an object in motion will stay in motion unless acted by a net external force. Now before you start jumping the gun, let me tell you one very important thing. Now we don't know whether Newton got inspired from the knowledge sources that were from India, because back then spice trade and silk trade were at its peak. However, there is no written evidence about any such thing. And our intention of Project Shivoham is not to discredit or disregard anybody. We're just trying to bring forward the historical facts in its right form and content with a deep research.
I feel that.
Further down,
I feel that. So then Newton must have been inspired by this, because he's basically saying this same thing in different words. He's wording it differently. I feel like I understand it a little more the way Newton puts it, but it was already said before him.
Maharishi Kanada says that Prayatna Visheshana Nodan Visheshana. What it means is particular effort results in particular impulse. So this principle of particular efforts result in particular impulse is cognate to the second law of motion. The rate of change of momentum of a body is directly proportional to the force applied on it, as given by Newton. Basically what it means, both from Maharishi Kanada as well as Newton's point of view, is whenever you apply a specific amount of force on a body, impulse exerted on that body is proportional to the force that I apply on it. Up next is Karya Virodhi Karma, the effect or the karya always opposes the action, which is the karma. The effect always opposes the action. This is very popular. The third law of motion. Every action has equal and opposite reaction. So not just about gravity, Maharishi Kanada explains about different laws of motion, and even atomic theory is also part of the same Vaisheshik Sutras. We are planning for a detailed documentary on this one, explaining about all the scientific and philosophical principles given by Maharishi Kanada. We are working on it, and it could take a couple of months.
He just
And we have
reworded
another
it.
great Indian astronomer, Varaham, who also quoted about gravity in his book Panchasiddhantika. And this is what he says. Just like a flame, when it is lit low, always goes upwards, same way any heavy body that's thrown up will always fall downwards.
What
Here
goes
he
up
uses
must
the
come
word
down.
guru for the heavy body. The word gravity, which we use today in English, is originated from the Latin word gravis, which is cognate to Sanskritam word guru, which means heaviness or massfulness. And this is the same reason why Maharishi Kanada also used the word guru for explaining about the gravitational force in the beginning of this video, which I said. Then we have another great Indian mathematician, Brahmagupta, who also conceptualized the gravitational force. He is the first one to use the word in its entirety, Guruttwakarshanam, which means gravitational force, in his book Brahmasputa Siddhanta. Brahmagupta's works, along with many other Indian scientific contributions, were translated by Al-Biruni, a West Asian polymath and a scientist. And in his book, he quotes what Brahmagupta said about gravity. Unfortunately, I couldn't get hang of Brahmasputa Siddhanta, but this is what it is. Now, if we try to put a timeline starting with Maharishi Kanada, who is conservatively placed in 600 BC, it could be much older in time than 600 BC. So we have Maharishi Kanada, who first conceptualized gravity and the laws of motion. And then we have Aristotle from Greece in 3rd century BC, who conceptualized gravity. Then we have Varaham from 6th century CE talking about gravity in Panchasiddhantika. Then we have Brahmagupta in Brahmasputa Siddhanta about the same time talking about gravity. Then we have Al-Biruni 10th century and many other Islamic scholars who worked on gravity. And then Galileo, he conducted experiments on the gravitational pull. And then we have Kepler, who kind of conceptualized the planetary motions and the gravity. And finally we have Newton, the one who has empirically conceptualized gravity. So all these people are the great physicists behind the evolution of gravity, what we know today. Each of them have their own contributions to this equation. So this is why I said Newton discovering gravity is a very subjective fact. And what you're looking on screen, this is what it looks like when we start reading history in an unbiased manner. Now, I don't know if there is someone before Maharishi Kanada, a written record or any other aspect which talks about gravity, but as far as we researched, he's the oldest of all. So this is a very brief fact-based history about how gravity was first discovered in India and eventually developed by people around the world. And one more thing, the apple never fell on the Newton's head, by the way. It was just a story. The trigger for Newton to work on gravity is not an apple, but it is from Kepler. So Johannes Kepler is the one who first discovered that the orbits of the planets are elliptical in nature and not circular. So Kepler hypothesized that there is some sort of celestial force which is pulling the planets closer in the path at one point in time and not so closer in another point in time. So that's what is causing the elliptical orbits, and that has been the input for Newton further to develop gravity the way we know today, giving it more a mathematical format. Well, science is not always a one man's property. It's always an evolution beyond the borders, and all we need to have is a rational mindset to understand the facts in its right format. And as always, thanks for watching.
That's crazy. But yeah, I guess so. He's not saying like Newton stole it and took all the credit for himself, but Newton basically like learned from those before him, and Newton did, add his own, add some theories to the laws of gravity that maybe the ones before him had said before, but Newton didn't necessarily discover gravity like discovered way back then. But that's all we have for this video. Let me know how you guys feel about it. If you enjoyed that, don't forget to subscribe, like, and check out the next video. See you guys next time.